everybody. We'll make sure we finish 3 o'clock so you can have your council meeting. Otherwise, we will be adjourning your council meeting for 1 minute to carry on with R&A. Welcome to those joining on live stream. We have apologies from Councillors Kett, Reverend Cook and Councillor Pottinger. Are there any other apologies? If not, I'll move those apologies from the Chair. Thank you, Darren. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions carried. Thank you very much. The agenda is set out, so I'll confirm the agenda from the Chair. Declarations of interest will be noted. So let's move to the minutes of, firstly, the meeting held on 22nd of October 2024. If there's no amendments or changes, could have someone move those? Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Darren. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions carried. And then the extraordinary meeting on the 19th of November. Thank you, Ria. Thank you, Darren. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against, abstentions carried. Financial risks update. Jamie's birthday, so he is not here today. So Patricia will take us through this paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. This is a pretty standard paper for this the last period. The Treasury report noticed that the average cost of debt has come down slightly, just as we've put some things in. Some new borrowings, we've just had the rates drop a little bit. And we are totally compliant at present with the liability policy. But we do note that if you look on page 14 of board books, so page 2 of 3 of the report, that we are forecasting at present on our current debt forecast based on the current capital program forecasts, excluding water, that we will have a breach out in the middle of early 2028. We'll keep that in note, and we're just waiting. We're potentially going to take some more forward start interest rate swaps for that period to cover that slight dip. There's also an update included within the paper in relation to the ICL loan advance. That has actually decreased by 1.7 million since the 1st of July, and as they've been making principal repayments. And it's sitting currently at 30th of November at 17.4 million. If there's any questions?
Tom.
Patricia, the breach in 2028, as I look at it, am I right in reading this properly? It's a consequence of having too little debt rather than too much?
It's not having any swaps in place to have the correct amount of fixed rate debt. It's a fixed floating movement. So we've got swaps in place to fix a lot of that debt. That's the green shaded bit, which is swaps. And the blue component is fixed rate. So we have to have a certain component out so many years of fixed and floating, and we're just under it on that projection.
Okay, so the issue again is not that we've got too much debt or too little debt, it's the fact that we don't have enough in fixed rate set at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've been, given the current yield curves, we've been taking quite short loans. We haven't been taking 8-10 year maturities or longer. So we've been keeping it quite short and rolling it, and that's seen right across the local government sector. So we are looking at forward start swap market on a regular basis. We've got a sweet spot that we're looking at. So when it gets to that sweet spot, we'll fill.
Yeah. And am I right in thinking that only crystallises when you get to that date? The breach only crystallises when you get to that date.
Correct.
So the question is, the next 3 years, is there an opportunity to take some more? Okay.
Yes, there'll be plenty of opportunity to take more swaps.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant.
Yeah. Question on that, and then one on the repayment from ICL. What's our forward start policy in terms of tenure? How far out do we forward start?
We don't have a policy.
Yeah.
That specifically says how far out. We take it based on the things. At the moment, I think we're only going out 2 to 3 years max.
And you talked about a sweet spot you're targeting, which I think is a good idea, but how is that defined in terms of what's the...
At the moment, it is a rate that is lower than what our LTP had forecast.
Cool. Okay, so you use the sort of budgeted figures guide and the LTP as a guide for sort of below that's a good strike point.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Just before Nobby followed, so Bancorp are advising
Bancorp
around the sweet spot,
Yeah.
and so you're taking advice. before
So
you make
we're
a
taking
decision.
advice before we take this in. Bancorp we're involved in the setting of our interest rate assumptions right through the long-term plan, and then they're the ones watching the market for us and advising when they think it's going to get to a point.
Yeah, I think it's important because it just gives elected members confidence that our Treasury is doing the best it can to land on the budget we've set for LTP in terms of cost of capital. Second question is with regard to the 1.7 million that's been repaid from Invercargill Central. How have they managed to do that given the cash flows they showed a significant loss position on a annualised basis for a period of time? So how are they now enabled to pay 1.7 million?
So they are using a component of it as a bit of a revolving credit facility, so they are paying back and then drawing down. But having said that, they have only drawn down once since July, or they're about to draw down this month for the first time, but it's not as much as what they've paid back. So rather than them holding cash, they are actually repaying us. So
right, okay. Okay, I understand. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Nobby.
Just a couple of questions not related to that. If we are in a position in the next year or two to sell property, be it Donovan Farm or be it the building that we currently occupy, those funds would sit in the bank somewhere, even if the Donovan ones were reserved in such a way they could only be used for a certain thing. That would help our net debt situation.
correct.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. That's me.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? If not, could I have someone please move the...
I'll move.
Receive the report. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Leslie. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions, carry. Thank you. Internal Audit. Peter, welcome. We'll take your paper as being read and let you highlight any items you want for the committee.
Afternoon, Chair. The area I'd like to highlight is just the Building Consent Authority assessment from June, July this year, where we've deemed to keep our accreditation to grant building consents. We've deemed a low risk by IANZ, and our next assessment will be in June 2026. Happy to take any questions.
Tom.
So obviously, all of us are looking for opportunities to save money going into the future, accepting obviously the need for an internal audit system. Am I right in assuming that the number of internal audits that are done in any year is at our discretion, or is it mandated externally in some way?
At our discretion and as the budget will allow, Councillor.
Right. So, but you know, we set the budget. So, I mean, I wonder if that's just an opportunity, Chair, particularly during these very straitened times. Given that we're using an external audit partner, Deloitte, who's not known to be cheap, to do it, despite being called internal audit, we've got external auditors doing it. Whether there's an opportunity maybe to save some money in the future by reducing the frequency or whatever of internal audits.
I'll let Patricia.
I'm not suggesting, by the way, that that's an ideal thing, but at the same time, you know, we might be making more difficult decisions than that as far as savings are concerned.
So I'll just remind members and through you, Chair, that while we use Deloitte as our internal audit partner, they typically only do 2 to 3 reviews a year, as the budget allows. We use our internal staff to do the bulk. So all those green ones highlighted on page, and now my pages won't come up, page 30, are all done in-house.
The question remains though,
Yeah.
Patricia, could we?
We could drop it down,
Yeah.
correct.
Unless there are areas you specifically require an external to
Internal
carry
audit,
out.
Yeah.
Ria,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a small question really. On page 24 of board of whatever it is, the page, under internal audit plan, you've got audits completed the 13th of July to 8th of November, environmental health /2. I just really wanted to know what those numbers represented.
It's orders, reviews and audits of the environmental health team
So there's two
for their
reviews.
MPI certification to be able to issue verifications for food establishments.
Okay, thank you.
Grant.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a comment on the building consent process. That's a great result, so well done. I was reading that report and then I got to the sort of criteria and I thought, oh, they've failed us, but then I realised it was the criteria, so give me a wee heartbeat. But just wanted to understand with regard to the internal audit processes, would this committee get a look at the scope of those audit briefs at any stage, like as a sort of just a pulse check on sort of do we feel they're covering the right things? Is that something that we should be seeing from time to time? You know, so we might have a revolving piece that we see what the audit scope is for our Treasury Management Review, for example, and so the committee's comfortable that the audit's actually focusing in on what we need to.
Do you want to highlight
Yeah,
the
so-
process in
So,
terms of setting out our
yeah, so the processes, and it probably reflects that these are the first ones currently sitting with our external provider that we've done, and it's probably this triennium, is that when they have done their report and they report back, we report the scope at the same time.
Oh,
So that-
through here.
Through here. So
Okay.
you will see the
Okay.
reports from Deloitte
Okay.
when they come back through. Typically, you'll see them in public excluded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that includes the scope. But what we can do as part of when we're developing the plan, which we're going to have a look at next year, again, what we would cover in those, especially those internal areas of what's being checked, and say the payroll checks that get done every month, or the receipting ones,
Yep.
because they are very mechanical and very operational.
And just so to just get a bit of deeper understanding, so that would be, so this, when that's being done, this yourself, senior management, would have an input into that scope, but equally the auditor would bring some stuff to say, well, here's the things we should check across, you know, we check these across local authorities and we believe we should check that within this policy. That's how that would work, yeah. So, moving forward, how would we see, and it may be within here and I may have missed it, but in terms of how our budgeting, monitoring, management process is working within our financial performance. So we see our financial outcomes, but how good is our system and our process around how we do our budgets, how we review those, and how we report against those? Where would we see that within an internal audit program on this list?
I have a funny feeling, I'm just trying to find the right table, Peter, but we've got that programmed for next year, haven't we?
I just couldn't see it. Well, you know, it may be in a wider category that's a subset of a category, if you get one. But I just couldn't see a particularly one that focused in, which is obviously a really important piece, because then it informs our LTP, you know, and we don't want to get tripped up on sort of our budgets being out.
There's an operational spend monitoring and management review programmed in for 24-25.
That's on that list, is it?
Yeah.
So that
Page 30.
includes review of the system and process as well as the outcome.
It can be.
You're asking for that?
It can be, or it will.
Well, we haven't scoped that one yet.
Okay, so which one is it, sorry, just on that list?
Operational spend monitoring and management.
Below procurement.
Oh, yeah, okay. And so, yes, okay, thanks.
Perhaps take those comments on board when
Yeah.
you're looking at that. Nobby?
Yep, just to add on to what Tom was saying about audits in general and how we might find some opportunities to do a little bit less in some low risk areas. I guess it annoys me a little bit that the current government have said that they want us to keep costs down, and yet they push stuff onto us and then say, and you're going to have to pay for it. So two classic examples of that, which both relate to water. So the water regulator has said to us, we are going to have a watching brief on you, as is the Commerce Commission, but the watching brief you have to pay for. So I think that's a little bit ironic that government organisations that are normally funded through taxes have an ability to cost recover of us by way of levies. So I will push back on that. But the other issue is the issue of the escalating audit costs that we have each year from Audit New Zealand. And I will ask local government New Zealand to push a bit harder on this, because most of the councils that I talk to at local government level are also suffering from escalating costs of audits. And it's because internationally there's been some increased audit requirements that have come to the Auditor General's, I guess, front door, and he's passing them on to his teams to do. And what I've said to that is, well, that's all very well, but that's extra costs we have to pay for, or our ratepayers have to pay for. If you're doing some low-level audits at the bottom end of the scale as you come in each year, and you've found little or nothing for 5 or 10 years, why wouldn't you just do that part of the audit on a triennial basis as opposed to an annual basis and keep the cost down for us? So I will continue to pursue both of those, because certainly the annual audit has a significant cost attached to it.
Thanks, Nobby. I know it's something you've raised before, and I guess we'll continue to do so.
Yeah, I think the government one recently around water's been frustrating. You know, we get daily messages that you've got to keep the lid on rates, and then they just push their services onto us and tell us it's a user pay system. So yeah, that's really frustrating. So we'll get that message back to those that are making it.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, could I have someone move the 4 recommendations as set out? Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Grant. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Abstentions? Against, abstentions carried. Thank you very much. Health and safety. Trudy, you and Tash. Welcome.
This can't be question free.
Kia ora, through you, Mr. Chair. So I'd just like to introduce the committee to Tash Anderson, our Acting Health and Safety and Wellbeing Manager. So she'll be reporting today.
Thank you, but we'll make sure Trudy will look after the questions from members.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thanks. Good afternoon. The 3 things that I'd like you to take away from the report that you've all got is that from our external scan, you can see that our team keeps a close eye on things nationally. We take what WorkSafe gives out as instructions, information, and we apply them internally into our safety insights. There has been an increase in verbal abuse reported. I think this is down to that we've had a culture change in our reporting behaviours, and that we are engaging with the teams, and we've made it easier for them to report to us. And the third one is that the EAP service is being very well used, and it is supporting our staff quite well. Any questions?
Questions, Tom?
I'm sure everybody's been thinking about this, but are you giving thought to the implications of the criminal prosecution of the Chief Executive of Auckland Port in terms of how we should be, if we're behaving in a way that fully would satisfy the, I'm not even sure who it's going to satisfy, but you know what I mean.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, and there's some work that I have the team doing in the new year for some further training for our executive team on understanding our obligations and responsibilities under the various acts.
I mean, I think it would be useful, actually, if governance get a summary of that too. I know that we are not criminally liable, but nevertheless, we should know what we're asking you to do is appropriate.
We can do that.
Yeah.
I just add to that, it's a focus of every board that I'm on, and every advisory board, and it's the top of the agenda. Even it is case law, but it is early days, but it is certainly a focus that every organisation needs to make sure they're across. So, thanks, Tom. Grant.
Thanks, Chair. So just thanks for the report. Couple of questions. With, I think it's on page 33 of 41 board books, around the outcome, the person who drove through the worksite at Layard Street, did we report that person to the police and did they get followed up, do you know?
Yes, so NES, who were the contractors for that, they did report to the police. The police have come back and they are paying a little bit more attention to the work sites because there has been an increase in vehicles going down the wrong way and also vehicles speeding, so they're doing over the 30 k's and that, and the police have confirmed and are having a look at that.
Yeah, I mean that's the feedback I'm getting from others in the sector. So are you confident that we've got processes, because I mean we can't actually stop probably someone doing that behaviour, but if they start to progress down a block lane with his workers, do we have a sort of a bail out call, or pick up your tools and start chucking them to slow them down? I don't know.
Oh, through you, Mr. Chair, we probably, I don't know if everyone's listening, but should have a closer view on that point in terms of that traffic management and the mitigations that staff have in place when there's a breach of a site.
Yeah, and it's the immediate ones, I think, because you can't stop them, but you can obviously prevent people from getting impacted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces in response to that question. The first is that whenever we're doing work, obviously the team are required, the contracting team are required to put in place appropriate traffic management. And so that comes through that process that we're the regulator for, as well as us obviously making sure that our contractors have got in place good processes from that perspective. When it comes to, I think more of the question you're asking is more of a process and culture within the contracting team's question. And what I would say is that I think Invercargill City Council is still on a journey in ensuring that we are appropriately across the health and safety of our contractors, that our processes aren't yet at a level that I would expect or I would like to see them be for us to have ultimate confidence that all of our contractors are where we want them to be. And that's part of that health and safety journey that Council is on as an organisation. Definitely something that, I wouldn't say there's gaping holes, but I'm also not confident that there aren't gaps in our contractors' processes and frankly within our own processes in assuring that we're meeting all of our PCBU obligations.
Yeah, because it really is the sort of, the process fails or the traffic management someone ignores it, then what do we do? We've got to have a secondary backup system. Second question, if I may, Chair, is on page 35, just with the, on the visual thing around the near misses and the spike there, was that a surprise? Was there any particular events that we were doing that seen that, or was it just a sort of a outlier?
Through you, Chair. I think near misses we should always look as a positive thing.
100%.
So,
yeah, I agree. I'm just trying to understand what caused the spike in April, May.
I think that just comes down to the time. That was probably a lot to do with traffic management and how there was quite a few.
Right.
I think we had.
So it corresponded to a sort of an area that would potentially see more near miss events.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Nobby.
Yeah, just some questions around the bottom report on page 37 of board books, which is the events broken down by type. Got a massive increase between incidents from 40 up to 108. And I guess the dilemma for that sort of reporting is, does that mean we've got a whole lot more incidents than we had last year? Or does it mean we've got a whole lot more incidents reported as opposed to last year when they may not have been reported?
For you, Chair. Most of that comes down to there's been an 86% increase in verbal abuse reporting, and I think that comes down to we have new means for people to report.
Yep.
Very simply, now it's just scan a code and report an incident, so we're trying to get to the point of making it very, very easy.
Yep.
So more reporting than actual incidences.
Yep. So what happens with the reporting when you get on the following page where you get verbal abuse jumping from 7 to 50, which is huge. Like, it's all right to report and it looks good in the report, but what happens to the person who does the reporting? Do they get interviewed by somebody, and is there some sort of low-level investigation? Do people get held accountable for being abusive?
Sorry, Nobby, this little, I know you're talking direct to
Sorry.
staff, the rest of us can't hear,
I'll start
sorry.
that again then. So when you have things like verbal abuse, which is now reported, which is a great thing, do we then not just collect the stats, but do we then go on to what's the remedial action to encourage or discourage repeat offenders and reinforce that it's good to report? Because if you don't, then the reporting drops back.
Yes, we do. We trespass people at the end of the line.
Yep.
We always try not to do that first. With our staff, the most thing that we do there is that we can't control the public, but we can mitigate how it's affecting our staff. So we have a lot of resilience training.
There's de-escalation training,
Yep.
support for things like, from as simple as, do we need to take a time out, go for a walk around the block, talk to your manager, peer support. There's all those things are in place, but as Tash said, it's a last resort to get to the point to want to trespass a member of our community. We offer public spaces for the public, but if they are unable to behave in a manner that's appropriate, then we do take each manager of the different facilities can take the right action that they need to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Two questions from me. One following on from that, does that sort of result in some of the increase in numbers in EAP use? Because the EAP has increased substantially, and I'm sure you're doing as much as you can to support staff and through Michael, but it is a significant increase.
It is an increase, but we're really pleased to see that because it's a service that our staff feel comfortable using, and they're making, it gives them a space that's safe and they don't have to, it's confidential, and it is making a difference. From those who are happy to share their experience, they're really pleased with it.
Second question from me is just to ensure, and we have process around health and safety in view of the unfortunate death in Lower Hutt, Councillor Owen Pond in the last week, and a councillor has asked me just to ensure that, raise it and ensure through health and safety we've got our policies and processes well covered on.
I think from a risk perspective and understanding our council's tolerance, any work that's been done, that would be done in that space, did you want to comment at all, Michael?
Yeah. Sorry, not understanding what the issue is?
There's a death of a small child at a council-owned water park in Lower Hutt.
Okay, sorry.
Through yourself, Chair, look, it is a known risk in relation to our venues and sites. We've got risks across a number of our different venues and external sites, including our parks. So we do have an awareness of all different site risks. Not all can be mitigated. That's point one. Point two is where we can't mitigate them to the fullest extreme. We do try and put measures around that, monitoring, etc. We do monitor in relation to most of the sites that we would have questions about, but there is an element of risk, and it is an unfortunate, and my feelings go out to the family associated in the Lower Hutt, but it is something that is a known risk in relation to the council facilities. So it's on our risk register. We do have monitoring in place, but it is not something you can completely mitigate away from.
Thank you. Just wanted to note it. Grant.
Yes, I suppose it's a little bit linked to that. So with the recent sort of challenges we faced with TKTT, and clearly that had an impact on some of our staff. So how have we monitored that from a health and safety perspective to ensure that our staff are sort of being cared for, I suppose is the word I would use?
Sorry, Councillor, I'm just, we offer a lot of support for our staff. I'm just mindful this is a public meeting. And anyone who needs support can talk to their manager in the first instance, but they also can use EAP, any of our health and safety team, or any of our people and culture staff. There are loads of options available that we have for anyone who works for us.
But is that self-referral, or can it be referred by a line manager, for example?
Yeah, we can go through a process if a line manager works through a process with their people and culture
So we can catch those
team
people.
member.
Yeah.
We try to look after everyone and take extra care to touch base with them, especially if they've been in a specific event, or there's different processes we follow depending on the event or what took place.
And those duties are being discharged appropriately.
Yeah.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, sorry, Nobby.
Just a reflection on the question you asked, I guess, which Michael responded to. I'm wearing my ex-health and safety inspector hat. There's always a balancing act between the duty of care to totally protect any risk, but not to the extent that it doesn't allow for the, say for argument's sake, a pond in the park to be actually used. So a good example is we had the pump track recently out at Otara, had 2 kids face down in a ditch. That's not the first time, and so a lot of feedback online about that, but about 10% were basically taking the line, hey, you know the risk is there, you're a parent, you should be looking after your children. Where the other 90% were saying, well actually there's still a line that if you know you've got a risk there, you should fence it off. So, and we're always going to have that, I think, with the, I mean, we've got water at Queen's Park that kids could get face down in as well. At what extent do you just keep fencing?
Understand, thanks. But Michael, did you want to?
Through yourself, Chair, I probably need to update in relation to that particular incident, because there's been a number of incidents on that site. We tried a mitigation measure in place. That mitigation measure didn't prove to be completely successful, so we've taken further actions. We've actually installed fencing in that particular case, to try and slow down the exit from that pump track site, and that's purely around protecting the exit of the site, not necessarily from the drain itself, so the families can exit away from a high traffic site and not have an incident of that nature.
Thank you. Thank you. If there are no further questions, could I ask someone please move the acceptance of the report? Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Leslie. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstentions carried. Thank you very much for that. That ends the public session. I move from the chair that we move to public excluded. Thank you, Ria. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. And we